guess why I'm here is I was an educator in the school district for a number of years. I'm a parent of a child in the school district. I have worked with Ms. Ramsey through Sage Consulting. I ran for Board of Ed at one point, and I have a Facebook group called South Orange Maplewood Cares About Schools, where we discuss a lot of these issues and we talk about what's going on in the schools, and I've been advocating for a long time to change some of these things, but especially to change the curriculum. So my whole thing has been since the beginning, something is wrong with this curriculum. This is not, nobody's blaming the teachers, nobody's blaming the students. This is a curricular issue. These kids are not going to do that. They're not. They didn't understand. They weren't taught. There was a disconnect that occurred to allow this to happen. These kids are not at fault. No one. I have not seen one person blame the children for what happened, or even blame the teacher itself. What I've seen though is there's a huge disconnect. That what are we teaching our kids if they thought that that was okay? This is a accumulating project. As an educator, I know that they learn background stuff. We teach them all this background, and then we get to the point where they're doing that project to show what their knowledge is. So where did that disconnect happen? And then to find out that from 2002, the Amistad curriculum has been in place, and from 2002, our district has done nothing to incorporate it into the curriculum, that's scary to me. Where has that been? Yes, and I know my child has gone through the school district. I was a social studies teacher and an African American history minor. I know how poor that curriculum is, especially in the elementary level. Those kids do not get an understanding of any history, really. The first time they really get exposed to anything is at the middle school level. But still, when this happens, there's a problem. And the district was warned. James sat here and just told us, I questioned that curriculum in January, and they did nothing. They sat there and they did nothing. And they, I've been quoted in the news as saying, blew it off. To me, I felt like that was a blow off. And I stand by those words, because that's what happened. They heard a parent complaint, they blew it off. That is their MO. That is what they do all the time with so many parents. I have had it happen to myself numerous times, but I have seen lots of other parents who have done that, and it upsets me. I'm an educator, so my job, I feel, is to help people and to help them understand what is right and how to make that process work. So why we started the group we did was to try to help parents understand those things. Because sometimes, and a lot of time in this district, things are not right. And parents don't know how to do that because, hell, I was an educator myself. I mean, like, my mom was an educator. I learned you don't question educators. Somebody comes home from school, you guys all know. You come home from school, the teacher says you're wrong, well then you are wrong. Like, there was never in my household that we questioned the educators. But when I hear some of these things that are happening, I have to question the district. I have to question it. So I have parents all the time contacting me, direct messaging me, doing all this stuff like, is this right? I don't understand this. How can you help me? I need someone to answer this. How do we help our special ed needs kid get what they deserve, what they need? So that's where I come in, because I try to help them. And I try to be that voice for some of the parents that can't be that voice or don't understand how to be that voice. So that's why I'm here.
My name is TJ Whitaker, and I'm a teacher in the school district. I've been at Columbia High School for 15 years. I'm also a parent in the district. My daughter Kendi is a senior. And the thing that I want to say is Black suffering in the classrooms in South Orange and Maplewood School District have been going on for at least the last 15 years. Beyond that, Brother AJ, you shared a little.
35.
I can tell you, my husband went through the school district. It's been going on for.
Not saying I'm 35 or 40 years old.
But so that black suffering has been taking place, and it's been ignored. It's been masked. In some instances, it's been trivialized. And so when I started working here, from the time I started working here, we've had a principal who has said that the black children at Columbia High School, many of them they don't have fathers, and so that explained a lot of the performance in the schools. That same principal in the meeting, tells kids who live in a certain, part of the town that take off your hood. This isn't the hood. You're in school now. We've had instances where at student events, a volleyball tournament, for example, you had a team that was allowed to name themselves the South, and then on the back of their t-shirts they had various sayings that harkened back to slavery, 1863, the Mason-Dixon line, things of that, antebellum was right, things of that nature. Friday Night Live, I don't know if they had this when you were still at Columbia, but to take off on Saturday Night Live where the students do sketch comedy. We had an incident maybe 6 or 7 years ago where a black teacher, African American teacher, was essentially like publicly lynched in one of those sketches. She was demeaned, and even after the school district was pressured into shutting it down, some parents of those students they rented, I think it was the Maplewood Women's Club, so that the show could still go on. We're talking about last summer on July 5th, the Maplewood police marched over 100 of its own young people out of town into Irvington because they didn't think that they actually lived in town. This was after a fireworks incident. So the black suffering that has been going on in this community, not just in the classroom, but outside in the community, has too often gone ignored. So now when we get to this incident, when Brother James told them, listen, this isn't right. So when we talk about our suffering being ignored, that's the latest example. Because he told them this isn't going to work. Not only did they follow through with the assignment, they posted it publicly for all to see. Okay, and then those of us who critiqued it, we get dismissed as absolutist, as if we don't want slavery taught at all, when in fact that was never the criticism. We talk about context. How are we teaching these young kids this? So a few months ago at Columbia High School, we had a screening of the documentary 13th. Right? And you want to talk about putting slavery in context, let's look at that film, right? We showed the film, we had a robust discussion, there were high school and middle school students there. That same film, 2 teachers at one of the middle schools wanted to show that film as a part of a documentary just last month, right? And it was shut down by the district. Right? The same woman who was in charge of the curriculum, who allowed the slavery curriculum to go on, shut down a screening of 13th, which would put that assignment in the perfect context. Right? So this is what I'm talking about when I say black suffering is ignored and it's trivialized, because the reason that screening of 13th was shut down, there was one white parent that wrote a letter to the school district and said that she felt that not only her child, but none of the children should see that film. We're talking about 2 classes of black children whose parents had signed off on a permission slip saying that they wanted their kids to see that with that teacher. One white woman is allowed to shut it down. When I called out institutional racism, the superintendent wrote a letter essentially dismissing me, supporting his administrators, and that's why I'm here. I've been a teacher in this district for 15 years. I've been a parent in this district for 15 years. I never hold my tongue. You see me at school board meetings, faculty meetings. I'm here, I'm for the children, and anybody you ask will tell you that. The reason why this brother's daughter, right, again, didn't say anything or didn't understand that it was wrong was because the context was never there. Slavery is about white supremacy, right? And when the school district understands that and teaches slavery in the context of white supremacy in America, then our children will understand and they'll be empowered to talk about slavery and be empowered to address those issues. Until then, they'll continue to see themselves as victims and not understand.
So my name is Aisha Faines, and I am an alumnus of the South Orange Maplewood school system. And it worked very well for me. I did go through and I did well, but I also had parents who advocated very much for me. So I'll go back to that. But just in listening to your stories, I think about this painting that is in my parents' home. And until very recently, my mother didn't know what it was, but it was my first painting that I did in kindergarten at Marshall School. And she thought it was people in a choir stand singing. And until recently, she just discovered it's actually
white superiority and black inferiority. And this isn't happening in a nutshell. This is something that our district has struggled with since I was young, and I'm not going to give my age, but an entire curricula, I should say, are being revised to minimize slavery, to take the founding fathers out of slavery, to rewrite it. And so it's very alarming to me when I see members of the school board who I think some of them lack cultural competency, and I think there's very much a trickle-down effect, attempting to silence the parents who are saying that this is a problem. And I did quote Zora Neale Hurston this morning, if you were silent about your pain, they will kill you and say that you enjoyed it. So we have parents who are in an uproar and have been in an uproar for many, many years, and they've tried to acquiesce, they've tried to play nice, they've tried to play the game, and where has it gotten their brown children? It's gotten their brown children an education that is accompanied with trauma. And that's not what they want. So now you have members of the school board who, instead of trying to address the shortcomings of a curriculum that is flawed and has been flawed for decades, are trying to make it a point to silence parents and make it seem as if everything is okay and that the parents who are complaining are in fact the problem. Or they're trying to say, well, look, you wanted us to teach slavery, so we did. And I think we are just sort of in a situation where we're avoiding the issue. But I think the larger issue in South Orange Maplewood, and like I said, I was fortunate to have parents who advocated, but in particular, and this is why I'm so inspired to see, you in the principal's face, and you in your principal's face, is because I had a father who, and it wasn't that my mother wasn't capable of defending me, it wasn't. But I had a father who not only was an attorney, but who was very much like hands off of my child, who from kindergarten through 12th grade made sure that those systemic attempts to see black talent and to curb black talent and to check black confidence did not happen to his kid. And I think that there's one takeaway that parents who are seeing this happen, and maybe their kid isn't in Jefferson, or maybe their kid is young now, or maybe their kid is older. There's one takeaway, is that you do not make it through this school system. You do not see your child graduate in a way that is where they have their confidence and they've gotten all that they could take out of that school system without advocating for your child. It is not a just add water school system. Right. You have to be in their face.
You have to take care of
it.
Yes. But it's unfortunate that because the district is so diverse in terms of socioeconomic status, in terms of we have a lot of first generation children that are here, that are first generation American children in parts of the community. They interface with education very differently. They don't know that they have that voice. They don't know that they have to advocate for their children like that. Of course, everybody here was fortunate. Both of them are educators. Your parent was an attorney. You're an attorney. You're an educator. So we know how what we need to do to make sure our children get what they need. But you had a whole cadre, a whole. I would say probably Columbia High School, by the time the students get to high school, the majority of the students are African American. So I would say probably a good 40% of those kids don't have that parent
And that's why it also takes a village.
Yeah, it
Because
does.
when one parent stands up for one child, I think you are also standing up for other children. But I want to make this point as well, that, you know, we do have, I think we're 29% black in South Orange. I'm not sure what Maplewood is. And so there's no way at this point of keeping diversity out of the towns. And so they've managed to use that as a selling point. But you still have a cadre of parents who want to keep diversity out of the classroom. And they are working very hard, and through school board elections and through the PTA, et cetera, to make sure that brown children and their children don't mix in the classrooms. And so I think you have to look at this assignment of reinforcing these notions of, I don't care if you just had a black president, just so you know, these kids, you used to be able to sell them, like within that context.
Right.
Because I think there's a very, very systemic attempt at all levels of all schools in the South Orange Maplewood School District to reinforce these notions of not only racial superiority, but also to practice apartheid within the school system.
Yes.
And I think it plays out most clearly when you get to the high school.
And I totally agree. I had said to them at the town hall meeting the other day, I said, would you have done this to the Holocaust?
Yeah.
Would you have done this type of project to the Holocaust?
Right.
And I said, you know, I said, because their focus is ELA, math, and science, because that's what they're tested in, they're not focusing on social studies. So they're like teaching it at the surface. So, but the Holocaust, on the other hand, it's not at the surface. My daughter read in her English class. They read a book on the Holocaust. So she knew certain facts about the Holocaust, and she knew the sensitivity of the Holocaust.
Right.
So these kids did
But
not
none of that
really
was utilized
understand.
for
None of that was
slavery.
utilized.
No.
Absolutely.
So
I'm
these kids did not know the sensitivity of this.
Right.
So they wouldn't offend the Jews. They would have never did a project of, you know, lining the Jews up to go into the fire or anything. They would have never done that. But yet you will scan our kids. You will have them do a poster or advertisement campaign of slave auctions, of slavery.
It was a very one-dimensional
Well, let me think about
project with no.
Let me think
no
about that. So, like I said, I have two kids in that class, and so after this went the way it did, you know, I asked them. I said, "So, tell me exactly what you guys learned about slavery." And their exact words were that we were slaves, and it didn't surprise me. And also, you know, my kids and I talk about this stuff all the time, so I went through the stuff we had talked about. We talk about this. We talk about how the slave owners made all the money and the slaves didn't get paid anything, and they benefited the slave owner and the country, but not the slaves. And they wouldn't go into any of that stuff.
So they didn't go. That's what I'm saying. Very one.
I think the slave auction was the
That was accommodating.
They're well aware of the difference.
Dupree, pop over. So this is what I want to.
Hold up. Let me get. Sorry.
That's what I'm saying. All right. So I got the stories. What I want to get right now, and I'm probably going to tell the story that I was saying up there a little more condensed, just to so I can edit it so it kind of makes sense. I want to figure out solutions or try to find out, I guess, from the two parents right here, or well, you know, the two households that have been affected here. What would you all like to see done?
I'll tell you what my mom did. She did a 15 page Google Docs where on Google Slides she did a presentation of what slavery is and key players in it and the whole timeline of it. She actually did it, created it, she sent it to the principal, and she asked the principal to share it with the board members and the district. And she's a consultant for restorative practices. She actually volunteered to come in to do restorative circles with the community, with the superintendent, around the slides and around slavery and around just getting a better understanding of what this means to our children and how it's going to really empower our children to know about themselves so they could take it to the next level. So teaching, getting professionals in there in the beginning to have the uncomfortable conversation, because that's what it is in Maplewood. You have people that don't want to have this conversation because through the conversation, and we know this, through the conversation, it's going to lead to empowerment. And once you get empowered and you know who you are and understanding the power that you have, then you become a more dangerous person in that community for other people that now think that, you know what, I gotta watch myself for my job, my place of being, because these people are going to be on the same level as I'm going to be sooner or later.
And when I spoke to the principal, I said to her specifically, there needs to be a conversation. The kids need to be brought together to have that deep conversation so that they understand the sensitivity of slavery. They understand what was done. They understand what went wrong. And the parents need to come together. The superintendent has yet to reach out to myself. He has, when I spoke at that town hall, he did not come over to speak to me, to say, I'm so sorry this happened. Nothing. The curriculum needs to be revised. The curriculum needs to be looked at with sensitivity, and it needs to be taught. Like, I just want what's best for my child. I want her, if she's going to learn, if we're going to say Maplewood is diverse, South Orange is diverse, then let's teach the diversity.
So from my perspective, I'll get kind of in the weeds on this a little bit because, like I mentioned earlier, I did run for the board last year. I understand the process. I know what the district's going to do if we make suggestions, and I want to make sure they have no place to go other than the right direction we want them to go in. So one of the things I would suggest is they look at the Amistad Commission curriculum.
Get teachers trained.
The superintendent of the curriculum here can take different components of that, incorporate them at really no cost
It's free.
to the teachers in the district at all the age-appropriate levels that can be introduced to the district. But the board then has to make it officially a part of the curriculum by voting on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that will put the superintendent Ramos on notice that you need to direct your staff to incorporate this lesson. My concern with this is, since this started, our current board members have been providing cover for Mr. Ramos.
Yes. Right.
Yes.
As opposed to actually representing the community that elected them.
Right.
I mentioned this on Facebook a few times, but I don't think people actually got it because it is kind of a weeds issue.
Yeah.
But that's the reality that we're facing right now. And so I'm going to keep tooting that horn because election time will come up eventually. And 3 of them are going to be up. And if they decide to keep providing cover for the superintendent and not consider the considerations of the parents who, by and large, to Brother Whitaker's point, want changes made, not take it away, but enhance what's currently going on. That we're going to continue to go in this circle. And like I said, I got 4 kids, 1 in high school, 1 in middle school, and 2 in elementary school. And I know how tough it is right now in a diverse town for me not to get on the phone every couple of days to talk about something. I want theirs. That's for the other kids out there who don't have it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We have to be their voice. We have to be the voice for the other kids that don't have fathers and mothers and uncles.
I found out that a lot of the high school kids were happy with what I did. In fact, the day the news truck showed up to the school, I was at a conference and I got a text from my oldest daughter who's 15 and she said, "Good job, keep it up." And I was like, what are you talking about? She took a screenshot of the news story on TV, sent it to me, and gave me a thumbs up.
It's huge.
At that point, I knew
That you
what I did was the right thing.
Absolutely.
My conscience was completely clear. It was before that, but even more so after that.
Validated.
And so I'll continue to do that because I know the history. I've heard some of the stories that you told before, and that concerns me as a parent, knowing what will end up after high school if we don't correct it now.
Absolutely.
The other thing too is that from an educator standpoint, once we do decide that the curriculum is going to be in place, it has to be monitored.
Yeah.
Instruction has to be monitored. Administrators have to be checking lesson plans.
Yeah.
They have to be in the classrooms observing what teachers are doing so they can have a sense of what is actually going on. I'm a principal at a high school, and the other day I walked into a class to do an observation, and the social studies teacher was showing the original birth of a nation. So I'm like, okay, let me sit down and see where this is gonna go. But as I sat, first of all, it was high school students, so they were cognitively and developmentally ready to be able to handle that subject matter. But as the discussion went on and as he framed it, he didn't show the whole movie. It was just excerpts of the movie. He he weaved it in such a way that the students had robust conversation, that it was a propaganda piece at the time, and they understood it in the context in which it was given. I spoke to that teacher afterwards and explained what was going on in South Orange Maplewood, and I said, well, in 5th grade, they decided to have an auction and slave posters, and he was like, oh, that went way wrong. And he said that wasn't the context in which to do it. He said, well, what was the purpose, or what was the objective of the lesson? I said, no one can tell us what the objective was.
Still don't know.
So again, it can be taught, but again, I think once we put it all in place, it definitely has to be monitored. It has to be, we need to make sure that the principals and the administrators are going in to observe what's going on in these classrooms, because it seems as if like your principal had no idea.
Yeah.
Maybe in your principal at South Mountain, she's new, so maybe she had an idea. I'm sure she walked past that display in the hall. That would have mortified me as a principal to walk through the hall and see
If
that.
it's advice, you don't see it.
Exactly. So these are the things, and then it has to be accountability from the top down.
Yes.
But right now, like you said, the board members are playing damage control, and they're so busy trying to keep the lid on it. The lid is off. This is international news.
Yeah.
The lid
Washington
is
Post. I read
off.
that in the Washington
Oh,
Post.
I got criticized for posting. A board member criticized me for posting that
Daily
article.
News, the Daily Word in Great Britain, BBC. It's global.
Huffington Post, it was a lot of different people.
Yeah.
So the main thing, and I'm just gonna reiterate what I said here, just in the context of, so I can set up the shot with everybody here. You know, my main reason to getting everybody together is because I grew up in the district. I heard what was happening. I know as a child at South Mountain what was done to me, you know, being placed in a special class, which they put our desk inside the janitor's room. And we were told it was a special class, and it was only the black kids in my class. You know, my parents went crazy when they heard about it. And you know, since then, or another incident in South Mountain where I had a teacher say to the class, while I was in the class, I was the only black child in the class, who likes the nigger and who doesn't. You know, and I threw my chair at the teacher and walked upstairs to the principal's office. But you know, those kind of incidents that occurred in the 80s, you know, 80, 81, 82, and it's 2017, and you know, the incidents have gotten, I guess, sharper. So it seems like there's a systemic problem going on in our district that needs to be uprooted and taken care of. Because, you know, like I said before, and I'll say that the tracking system started back then. When, and you know, you had the higher classes and lower, you know, medium and then lower. And if you walked into those classes, you saw the African American students were all in the lower classes. You know, all my Jewish friends were in the advanced classes. You know, and I was in advanced class. But you know, that it started the separation, and I think that is continuing, and I think all of that needs to be addressed and dealt with. And you know, nobody likes to look in the toilet.
Exactly.
And it's time South Orange and Maplewood starts looking at the toilet, because it's stinking, and everyone is smelling it.
Yes.
Across the country. When you have the BBC talking about what's happening at South Mountain, that's a problem.
That is. That's huge.
So that's why I brought everybody here today, because I wanted to hear your story directly. I was hearing it through different phone calls. I said, look, let's just get everybody together. Let's discuss it. Let's videotape it. And let's put it out there for the people to see. And whatever happens from that will happen. I think that action needs to be taken on multiple levels. We'll talk about that off camera. But you know, I just wanted everybody to get together and know one another, know that you're not alone, and that there are people out there supporting you on all different levels. Tomorrow I'm co-hosting 10 o'clock hour of Today's Show. I'm trying to make this part of the discussion. We are going to make sure that people know about what's happening in our neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just really quickly in terms of solutions, the district, whenever it's kind of pushed, talks about the anti-bias training that's going on. And truth be told, they hired a consultant 2 years ago. It's one woman, right, for the entire school district. So how many schools do you have in the district?
14.
14 schools.
I think it's 14.
So it's physically impossible for her to do all of that kind of work that needs to be done. So when we talk about that, the district has, to its credit, set aside $100,000 for cultural competency training.
Yeah.
So it's not, again, that the training is going to take place, but in what context?
Okay. Yeah.
Are we talking about undoing racism, or are we just going to do some kind of, again, touchy-feely kind of stuff where everybody's made to feel comfortable? There's real work that needs to be done. This brother mentioned restorative practices and how his mom is involved in as a consultant. The school district has begun. Now, the problem is, though, that people are under the impression that that training is taking place comprehensively throughout the district, and it's not. At the high school, we have one person who is actually fully trained in restorative practices. So that's the right way to go, but we actually have to do it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing in this district. We have a history of like some good ideas, starting things, and then the money goes away or it doesn't get the backing, and then we end up making the same mistakes.
And that's where the
incident happened in a restorative classroom.
Right.
I know that because the teacher went through, she works for the district for restorative training. The class participates in restorative circles every day after lunch. Every Friday when they have problems or fights and issues. Basically, you come together in a circle, you talk about how you've been wrong and how we can fix it. So for that to have happened in that particular classroom in the district that has it,
So that's juxtaposed against the bullying investigations that are going on on a daily basis and the suspensions that were part of the lawsuit a couple years ago, which I know have not been addressed yet.
No.
And so that's the topic I can't get to now. But I was telling them, I said, this fight is not over. Even when this one gets resolved, because that's my next topic.
Right.
And I think what we have to understand is that this is the district's MO. This has always been the district MO with everything they have done. It has always been crisis, reaction,
Put a Band-Aid on it.
put a Band-Aid on it, and hope it goes away.
Right.
And for so long, they do the crisis, they do the reaction, they Band-Aid it a little, and they say they're going to fix it. And they never do the implementation. And that's what scares me, because yes, TJ is right. Restorative justice, awesome.
Yes.
A great way of doing things. We need cultural competency training. We need all of that. And I'm happy that the district has started that process, but it is not in all the schools. It is not all the teachers. It is not, everybody is not getting that. And we will, like, they've talked about it. They're like, we're looking at the curriculum. So they'll sort of fix it, but are they gonna really look at all of the curriculum? Or is it just gonna be the 5th grade curriculum? Or is it gonna be, I don't know, how are we gonna look at all of, and if it's the social studies curriculum now we're looking at, there's problems with the English curriculum. There's problems with the math curriculum.
And all this stuff was mentioned during the education session.
How do we?
And the question is, does the board have the ability to evaluate the superintendent on success or failure?
They don't.
Deeper dive.
But it's so easy.
One person does.
One
person does.
I know one does,
But there's 8 other people.
Yes, that won't hold them accountable.
But it's so easy to do it because he has his goals in place. If he's not meeting his goals, then it's obvious.
But how do we know that his goals aren't simply the board's goals, and that maybe he's
Well, I mean, one of his goals.
for
We'll
that
put it this
reason.
way: one of the goals under his contract was to make sure that the teachers were evaluated. That's a state. That's a state mandate.
No, but then it gets even better because
So he gets a bonus if the teachers get evaluated. I'm like,
no, but it gets even better because I went and I spoke in front of the school board and listed to them, and you guys can find what, because I think it made TAP or something, because what I wrote. He didn't even meet all of his goals, but we yet gave him a
But they
good
voted.
amount of bonus.
$100,000.
With one dissension
Yeah.
to give him his bonus.
But we also,
Okay.
that
23,000,
yeah, 23.
32,000.
It might have been,